Hey there, folks. Welcome back to another episode of the East to West Hunts podcast. Alex here, and I am going to go over part 2 of I Drew a Tag. What now? Part 2 today is going to be on exercise and conditioning for your hunt. So something that I love to do is after clients draw a tag, I send out an email to them congratulating them on the note. And then we start talking about these 3 factors. One being, hey, planning the hunt is a big factor to it and how you're going to plan for that. But the other factor is obviously, the conditioning and then the gear. So part 2 here, we're focused on the conditioning aspect. And my goal here is to give you an idea of what I think is a really, really good way to prep for your hunt, assuming you're going to be in the backcountry and assuming that you are going to do something of hiking in and doing some form of harder factor of a hunt. Now, not to say that you should not be in shape if you are doing a whitetail hunt or something that's quite easy. I think you should be in shape and healthy all the time. However, I think it is a factor of the better you are in the physical aspect, the easier things will be as you progress in. And I also think it will help you be much more successful in your hunt because you're not going to be cashed out right when you start. So let's get cooking here on some discussion points that I have wrote down. First and foremost, I think you should assess the hunt demand. All right. So you should know by now what you drew and how high is the elevation going to be. And at this point, putting a plan together of where you're going to be hunting. How far are you going to need to hike daily? That's something to ask yourself. I like to ask folks, and I'll ask you right now, think about this. How far do you think you physically could hike in and hike out? And with that, right, you're going to have a pack on potentially. So how much weight will you need to pack in and feel comfortable with? And then if you do get something down, how comfortable do you feel packing that weight out? That's a factor too. So when I'm thinking about these factors of a workout perspective and conditioning, I'm thinking about strength and endurance. But I do think there is a flip switch at some point throughout the year where you are focusing more on the endurance factor versus just putting on muscle or weight training per se. So I think that's a big focal point for today. The other thought or question is, are you going to be backpacking in or are you day hunting from a truck or a base camp? I have seen and done physical hunts like this in both aspects. So I don't think one's necessarily easier than the other because if you're hiking in, you at least get to a point. So you go through a tough time and let's say you're 4 or 5 miles in, and then you're going to set up a camp. And in that perspective, you might be at that camp for a couple days. Maybe you're there for the whole damn week, whatever the case is, but you took a long journey and then you're stopping for a period of time to recover. So that's great. Truck-based camp might seem easier right off the rip, and technically it could be. However, you are going back and forth. So it's not like you're not going to be putting miles on. You just might have a more comfortable camp, which in respect to that, I do think you can get some really, really good sleep that way if you have a cot and you're nice and warm and all that stuff. And you might have some more creature comforts, which is a nice thing to have, honestly. So either way is good, but think about your camp selection of what do you want it to be like and what do you think is going to be necessary to have for a trip like this. So let's talk about the types of physical preparation. Big one, you have to focus on the cardiovascular endurance. So right now, I want you to think about what am I doing for my cardiovascular endurance today, right? For example, this week, I'll just throw off my workout plan. I've done weightlifting 3 times this week, and I've also done 45 minutes of cardio twice this week. And tomorrow will be another like 30-minuter. And I'll focus on more like running per se versus more of the what I would call zone 2 or I would call it lower intensity, longer endurance style work. So a little bit of a different facet there. However, I think it's very important to have that built in. And as you'll see with the workout template that I will roll out here, you'll look at hiking with some weight or some incline prep. If you're doing something like a Stairmaster or a treadmill and you're putting it on an incline and then potentially adding weight to that, whether that is going to be like a backpack, weight vest, maybe you're carrying it, right? You could be carrying kettlebells on a treadmill or whatever the case is. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So keep that in the back of your mind. The other one, strength training. I think strength training is important. However, I've been in those modes where I'm strength training a lot. I'm super, super fit in the respect that I'm strong. However, endurance might be lacking, and that is just because of how you are preparing or training throughout the year. So I do think that there's a flip switch where you might be bulking or putting on mass or strength or whatever the case is. And then you kind of shift into more of this cardiovascular aspect. So here, I really would put focus on your legs, your core, your back. I don't think that bench pressing per se is going to benefit you in packing out an elk, right? So you might be like, I can lift 350, 400 pounds. I'd question to think about, what is that going to be beneficial to when you're in the backcountry? I don't really know that you're bench pressing an elk hindquarter. So just think about that aspect in respect to your workout factor here. The other one, flexibility and injury prevention. You got to focus on mobility. You got to stretch. A lot of folks do not stretch. I'll be the first one to say I hate stretching. It's just not something that I enjoy. I honestly think it sucks. But yoga and mobility work after a workout, or just doing some of those static stretches are huge. And then you need the mobility in your hips, and you need your low back to feel pretty damn good as you start putting more weight on. So I think that is something to not forget about. So let's segue into what I would say pack training. When should you start this and how should you start this? Well, it should be yesterday. Okay. It's never too soon to start pack training. I have a client that sent me a note, one day, a couple weeks back, and he lifts quite a bit. And he's like, dude, this is like a lot harder than I expected. And this is so different than any of the training I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of the point, right? Like the suck factor should hit. And there are different days where you put it in. So you don't have to start off with a super heavy pack and do it for hours at a time, but progressively load yourself and improve it. And progression can be a factor of how much weight you have. Could be starting off with none, but your progression is going to be with some weight aspect in a pack, or as I said, that weight vest or whatever the case is, and your progression of time, right? So you might start off with hiking a mile, and then you're going to end up on certain days doing 5, 6, 10, or whatever the case is. That really should prepare you for a really, really good scenario when you're out in the backcountry. Okay. So if I think about training timeline, or, how long and when should you start? Well, as I mentioned, I would say yesterday. I typically start my pack training or my backcountry training more on the cardiovascular end once kind of the tail end of spring hits. So I would say like May timeframe is really, really good where I flip that switch. But again, I'm also working out throughout the year. So it's not like that's something that I stop. I just kind of flip my training scenario. And I think that's important to note. So if you are starting out today, I think it is imperative that you have at least 3 days a week of this cardiovascular training on the books. And then you do some strength training for your legs, your core, your back, so on and so forth, and mix in that mobility work, whether it's on the same days or you could do it after every single one of your workouts, whatever the case is. You could do it at home while you're watching TV, where I have stretch bands and I'm literally on the floor and I'm stretching my legs out and stuff like that. So again, you don't have to overcomplicate this stuff. It's just a factor of you actually have to do it. So that is it. You have to take action. Can't just sit there and dream about this shit. You actually got to go and do it. So a factor is it's reality. So training schedule. Here is like a scenario of a training schedule of what I typically put together for a client. And this does not have to be a factor of, you've been training all year long, or a factor of you're just starting. It could be a mix of both, right? Wherever you find yourself, just remember, do what feels good to your body to start, and start slower and move up. You don't go hardcore, balls to the walls kind of a deal and then get yourself injured. It's not the point of this. Doing anything is better than doing nothing right now. And that is the greatest part of this message that I want you to take away from today. It's you got to start and you got to start doing, but don't overcomplicate it and don't go crazy. So here's a good start. Let's play out the week. Monday, I want you to do some kind of lower body strength training aspect. Legs. Think about functional movements, lunges, squats. Do them with your body weight. This does not have to be crazy where you're doing, 200 pounds on a squat and then you're going into leg extensions and hamstring curls and all that other stuff. Do the functional stuff. And you could literally start with body weight and do it for endurance periods, right? So instead of doing like 10 reps, go 15, 20, 25. See how you feel after it. And then if you're doing a few lower body exercises, then do some short cardio after. So Could be 20, 25, 30 minutes. Go slow, treadmill, whatever the case is, put on a light incline and actually feel what that recovery is going to look like. Your Tuesday, again, depending on where you're starting, I'm putting this together as somebody that is working out. So again, use that with your own a thought process here of how your body feels. But Tuesday would be some form of like higher intensity training, some conditioning aspect. So you could be throwing in there, you could throw there a run. You could actually do some kind of like a CrossFit style exercise, something more higher intensity. You could be doing strength training and then do like, push-ups, sit-ups, and, even jumping jacks in between sets. Stuff that's going to keep your heart rate up higher for periods of time would be fantastic for something like this. So it does not have to be like this true high intensity training scenario. The moral of the story is do some kind of exercise and keep your heart rate up. I remember working with weight loss clients back in the day, and we'd do like a lower weight, body weight exercise.
Attention hunters, are you sick and tired of the complicated draw systems and tag applications that take place out west? Or maybe you want to plan a western hunt or maybe one of your dream hunts and you don't really even know where to start. Well, that's where East to West Hunts comes in. We take care of everything for you. We'll do the tag applications. We just need to put a strategy in play for you of what you're trying to do and when you're trying to go. Whether it's short term, mid-term, or long term, we want to have that play and that strategy together. And when you do draw a tag, we can look at do-it-yourself options such as hunt plans that detail out exactly how to hunt those areas, or we can get you booked with a guide and outfitter in that specific unit or area. So don't leave that hunt to chance. Give us a call, set up a time on the website, contact us on social media, whatever it is, and let's get planning towards that dream hunt of yours. And let's make it a reality. Check us out on www.east2westhunts.com. Again, that is www.east2westhunts.com. Also check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and podcast. Thanks so much. Talk to you soon.
Or maybe lighter weights, as like 10 or 15 pounds of some sort. We do some kind of body weight exercise and then make it a compounding movement of, a squat to press per se. And then we'd go on the treadmill for 2 minutes and then we get off and do another set. And you're just kind of keeping your heart rate up. Wednesday, now you would jump into some kind of like an upper body strength training session, right? So an example would be I'm going to do pushes on one day, and that's going to be, incline press, a flat bench, shoulder presses, tricep extensions, and lateral raises for my shoulders, right? That's an upper body exercise of strength. You could do back and chest. Again, don't overcomplicate this, and then focus on some core stability, some planks. Boy, planks are the greatest thing ever. You could do those. They're super simple. You could do them on the floor, in a mix with push-ups and a couple of other things, and you got a pretty good setup there. Thursday, this is a good day for active recovery. So we would be on day 4. Active recovery would be a lower intensity day. Could be zone 1, zone 2, which is, if you have questions about what this actually looks like, go Google it. What is zone 1, zone 2? It's going to be a measure of, for example, what's your max heart rate minus your age. It's going to give you some decent ideas of zones. Well, let's say you're sticking in between like 100 and 110 to maybe 130, 140 beats per minute, depending on your age. And you're doing that for 30, 45 minutes, and then you're going to go and stretch. Friday would be a really good day, or potentially Saturday, depending on how your weekends work out, where you do a rock of some sort. So this is where you're going to put a weight vest on, or you're going to put your actual hunting pack on, and you're going to put 10, 15 pounds in it, and you're going to go for an actual hike. And your hike could be literally around your freaking neighborhood, which I do all the time. People might think I'm nuts, but who the hell cares? I'm doing it for myself, not other people. Or I might actually go find a nice hike for 5 miles. I'm going to go hike and enjoy that. All right. And then again, flip-flop these on a Friday, Saturday if you feel, but then I'll go do another steady state cardio or zone 2 workout for another 45 minutes or an hour. And I'm going to do that on a treadmill, or I'm going to go do that on a Stairmaster. And then Sunday is going to be a rest day. So it's going to be, I'm relaxing. Maybe I'm just stretching and letting my body recover. And then I go back into it. Okay. So again, not anything crazy, but I think this is a really, really good basis of a starting point or a flip switch of how your current workouts are. I know a lot of folks are doing a lot of strength training, and I love strength training. I like putting, muscle and gaining strength. But again, it's not going to benefit you as much if your cardiovascular ability sucks in the mountains. Okay. So if you have questions on something like that, shoot me a note. My email is info@eastowesthunts.com. I'd be more than happy to share this. And again, this is a typical basis of what I would be recommending or sending out to clients. So again, clients, if you're listening and you're interested in doing something different than what you're doing, look out, because this is a good opportunity for you to get this going for yourself. So with that said, let's jump into what I would call realistic scenarios, right? So when you're training, you want to do something that's kind of factored towards sports specificity, right? So in the training world, it would be a factor of you want to train for stuff that you're going to be simulating, right? A basketball player wants to improve their jump. So they're obviously going to strengthen their legs, do power movements in those aspects, and then obviously simulate jumps, because the more you jump, the more you're going to get better at the same stuff that you're doing or that you're wanting to improve, right? So simulate steep terrain, simulate uneven ground and long days, right? So how would you do that? Well, steep terrain, if you really don't have steep terrain, right? Like I live in Michigan. I don't have steep terrain here like somebody that lives in Wyoming or Colorado that could be doing it. I remember living in Colorado and my steep terrain was completely different, because I could go in my backyard or drive 20 minutes. And I had a very, very nice hike right by the house that I could do all the time that would take me a good hour. So steep terrain could be an incline on a treadmill. Go put it at a 8-10 incline. Go rock that out for a long period of time. Trust me, you're going to sweat. You're going to get your heart rate up. You're going to feel it. Uneven ground. This is an interesting one, but a Bosu ball, if you have a gym, is a really, really good scenario for uneven ground. It will test what's called proprioception, which is basically your body trying to balance. And it's your brain signaling how your muscles are going to be reacting and then responding to this uneven ground scenario. But you could be doing lunges with your body weight off this Bosu. So one leg's on the Bosu, one's on the ground. Trust me, you're going to shake like a leaf, and you're going to gain the endurance in your legs to do that. And then long days. Now think about long days, but you might be hiking for 10, 12 miles in a day. So build up the endurance every week for yourself to be doing this. That's why I think it's important that you have these ruck days, or you do these like longer hikes on certain days. And then your cardio, when you're in the gym or on the treadmill or whatever the case is, you're doing it for long periods of time, because you want to build endurance in those muscles in your legs to be able to sustain those things and not feel super, super sore. So again, you're trying to emulate as much of that as possible. The other one, practice with your boots. And so a lot of folks, every year this happens, folks draw a tag and then they don't have boots. This might be their first year, or maybe they've been hunting a lot in the Midwest or on the East Coast, and their boots are going to be, waterproof muck boots, or some form of like, really, really high length insulated boot. And now they're trying to get a boot that would be good for elk hunting or backcountry hunting. And then they're not broken in. So you don't want to go out there without broken in boots. So I would tell you, practice with them. So on these hikes that you go out in, your day to day or week to week, put your boots on, put 5 miles in those boots, see how they feel, break them in. If you have hot spots, you're going to start recognizing that. You're going to feel your feet having a difference. Your feet might be sore after doing them. So it's important to actually apply and use the things that you're going to be using out in the mountains way ahead of the time that you actually are doing it. So you can feel it, feel it, smell it, see it, and you start being able to plan accordingly for what you're about to embark on in the mountains. So really, really good tip there, but make sure you do that. All right. One thing that I think is really important is a mental preparation. Okay. I can't tell you how often this happens, but the mental game gets you a lot of times way before your body does. You might overthink things. You might start telling yourself you can't do something when, trust me, you can. I remember reading one of David Goggins' books, and I think there's a lot of truth to it. But when your body starts kind of, it's feeling it. Your brain starts saying, you probably shouldn't do this. This is really hard. Maybe I should quit, whatever the case is. And he states at that point in time, you're at like your 40% max. I don't know if it's at 40, 50, 60, but I can tell you that you could push yourself way freaking harder. because our bodies are designed for survival, right? So at the end of the day, our body is saying, I want to survive, and now I'm going to try to play defense. You got to push through that defense. And when you do, then you really kind of get to a higher tier where you know you're capable of doing more, and that little whisper in your head changes significantly over that period of time as you improve. So your mental game, it's really important to train your mind for long hard days, and those long hard days could be two facets. It could be long hard days that are grueling, that suck, and you're going to start questioning what the hell you're doing out there. Or two, you might just not be seeing things, and you start getting into your head and you start kind of backing down from going out and being excited about the hunt. Both of them will absolutely screw you in the hunt. Okay. I've been on those days. So I'm speaking to you from a total experience, right? I've been on days where I'm out for 5 days. I've seen things. Maybe I blew a stalk or whatever the case is. My body's super sore, and you get back to the truck, and it's pretty damn nice when you get back to that truck. I'm telling you, put your pack away, you get to start driving around. You're like, oh man, I'm gonna just do this. In my experience, that has kind of been the end of the hunt. It really kind of segues towards it gets easier, and I don't want hard anymore. And I kind of mentally screwed myself there. So be aware of that. And I am so conscious mentally of that I literally like talk through it at this point. I'm like, hey, Alex, this is it. This is exactly what you've experienced before. Don't do this. And then I will go back out and go look at something else. Or, again, my hunt plan aspect, like I do hunt plans just like I do for clients. I have different areas. I might say, hey, I haven't seen stuff in these areas. It is time to move. And I get that excitement back when maybe I haven't been in the most successful scenarios. And I assure you, it works. It works, and it will be positive for you, but you got to stay motivated. So, with that, how do you stay motivated in your prep, right? Think of like a New Year's resolution. A lot of folks start off in their New Year's resolutions, and then they really start like dropping off after 3 weeks. So I remember seeing this in fitness, and I still see it from folks where they get super excited about stuff and then just like stuff just fizzles off. Hell, I see it with my own kids, right? They get excited about something that they get, and then after the first week, it's already dumbing down. By second week, it's dumbing down. I'm having to push the reset button to be like, get your butt to go do this again. And I'm pushing them to get back into the swing of things, because otherwise they're going to drop off, and then it's going to be disastrous because it's going to be too late to try to get back. So staying motivated, I think a big key is don't fry yourself out right off the rip. That's why I'm so big on, as I was talking about that workout perspective, don't go hardcore balls to the walls right off the bat, because you're going to get sore, and then you're going to hate how you feel, and you're going to be super tired, and you'll be like, I can't do this, or I don't want to do this. And then you're going to stop yourself from doing it. And that's going to work into your negative, even though you're trying to do something positive. So graduate yourself and do things gradually. I think that is a huge one to stay motivated. Two, I can't stress this enough, but you really need to know your baseline. So I think that you really, really should do a really, really like first week hike, do a 5 mile hike, see how you feel, and time yourself. Like you got to have some stats that you're comparing against, right? So, I did this with 15 pounds of weight in my pack. I did 5 miles. Here is how I feel. And I did it with a heart rate of 140. And I did it in an hour and 25 minutes, right? Assuming you're hiking flat ground, you're probably going to average somewhere between 20 minutes a mile. And you're doing 5 miles. So that would probably put you at an hour and 20 minutes. Maybe an hour and 40 minutes, just depending on how slow or fast you're going. But you get what I'm saying. Like that's a really, really good idea of, basing a timeline and having a goal set of what you're comparing to. And then your next week, you're trying to beat yourself on it, right? Like that's motivating. And then you beat yourself and you're like, yeah, I got this. And then you move forward again. I think that's a really, really good key component to measure things up, right? So again, I'd say it'd be safe to say you do 5 miles, you're probably going to be somewhere in between hour 20, hour 40, just depending on how fast you're going. Right? Don't stress yourself out on this first one, because you really, really want to get a good gauge of how you're feeling and also kind of where you're landing there. So don't get down on yourself. Moral of the story, just be okay with where your starting point is. But that's a really, really good way of staying motivated. Do the same thing for some weights. Do some things for cardio that same way, right? A big one that I really like to do one day a week is I do a cardio day where I am literally doing 5 runs. So I'm doing a quarter-mile run, 90-second break, quarter-mile run, 90-second break, and I do 5 rounds of that. It's literally a 25-minute workout, and I'll do like a 5-minute start, 5-minute end. It's great. When I'm feeling great to it, it's really, really noticeable. And then as I continue to do it, it's pretty damn easy to the point where I actually want to do more. But I have to tell myself that's not the point of my workout right now, is not to do more there. It's just to put it as like a conditioning facet to it to get through that. And it's more kind of a recovery day for me. So again, I know I'm giving you a lot of my personal examples, but I think it's important to talk about these things. So now, nutrition and recovery. I think nutrition and recovery are really, really big factor to how well you're going to do with your training. And it's also going to help you out in a lot of other aspects. One of them could be maybe you need to lose weight. Okay. Let's be honest. In America, a lot of folks need to lose weight. I need to lose weight, right? I could easily drop another 5 to 10 pounds and feel even better. And that's a aspect of my training program, right? If I'm going through a cycle where I'm trying to gain muscle, I'm going to eat a lot of calories. I'm trying to put on weight, but then I'm going to flip the script and now I'm going to try to lose weight and get lean and try to preserve as much muscle mass as possible, so on and so forth. Long story short, there's cycles to this. If you're going through your own cycle of just starting this journey, think about weight loss and a factor of, well, I'm trying to get a pack to be as light as possible so it doesn't suck when I'm hiking. Well, trust me, when you lose weight, it's going to help you out just as much, because whether that's on your back through your backpack or it's still on your body is having to work. So, really, really important factor to know. A statistic would be, for example, for every pound of body weight that you lose, you're taking about 6 pounds of pressure off of your knees. So your joints will greatly appreciate it sixfold, right? So if you lose 10 pounds, multiply that by 6, you're going to lose about 60 pounds of pressure. That is pretty freaking amazing. And that will make you feel a little bit better about having a pack that's going to be 50, 60 pounds or so. So, big important factor there. Anyways, with the fuel, I think it's important that you look at, what you're currently eating, and I would go towards more of a nutritional diet, high fiber, more fruits and vegetables, focus on protein, try to get protein to be, 0.7 to maybe 1 gram per pound of body weight that you want to be. Okay. So if you're 200 pounds and you want to get to 170, focus on maybe 150 to 170 grams of protein a day, but that will satiate you a lot more. And then at the same point, it's going to take away from those cravings of eating trash. And that's going to help you significantly. So up that fiber, up the protein, get some good carbohydrates in there, quit eating fast food and all that other shit that's not good for you. And stop eating just super processed crap. That's the simplest thing that I can give you. When you're out in the field, the reality is you are going to be eating carbohydrates and you're probably going to be eating some form of, packaged foods, so on and so forth. Be mindful of that. But what you're going to start realizing is your body is going to be conditioned on eating a lot less calories. So when you are going to be super hungry and tired and you just worked your ass off, you're going to get away with the factor of, peak refuel is going to be 1,000 calories. God, I was looking at one the other day. It had like 80 grams of fat in it. Like a package that is considered 2 servings of peak refuel had 80 grams of fat. And my mind was blown. But the reality is you do need calories. And if you are going to go with those packaged meals, you are likely going to be eating something like that. So be mindful of that part. I have yet to come back from a trip where I'm doing a long, strenuous hunt and gain weight. Doesn't really happen. So the other one, hydration, huge. There's really not a day where I don't drink 3 to 4 liters of water. I think that is just basic. You need that, or maybe let's consider it fluids, because I do like to use it's like Crystal Light Naturals basically. So it's like a stevia formulation of like lemonade, cleanse the palate. I'll have some Propel, right? Something like this, which honestly is not the greatest. It's got a bunch of shit in it, but it's not as it's not as bad as like drinking like a Coke or a Diet Coke or something of that nature. And I do all sugar-free stuff, so I mind you on that part. But don't be pounding hydration that's full of sugar. Get salt in. Salt is not harmful to you, so it's not going to bump up your blood pressure and all that other crap. Your body needs salt, and get it through your hydration of it, especially if you're sweating a lot and you need some electrolyte bases there. And then supplementation, get yourself a good vitamin. And again, I would look at some kind of salt aspect like an LMNT or some other hydration factor of that, and use it during your workouts. And I assure you those things are going to be great. When you get into an elevation environment, it is really, really key to try to get there a day in advance, maybe sleep at lower elevation and then start going up in elevation over time. And then note a couple of things. As you start getting in higher elevation, you are going to lose appetite. That is your first thing that you should notice, that you're not going to be hungry. That is a factor of the elevation. 2, you got to force yourself to drink. That's a big factor, because what ends up happening is if you don't start drinking and now you're not eating, it's a recipe for disaster. So you just have to be mindful. Again, you really got to gut check yourself of being aware of the things that are going on. So just keep drinking, which is a whole nother ball game. But hydro bladders versus smart water bottles, so on and so forth, and which one's easier. They both have their pros and cons, but at the end of the day, just get the freaking water in and pay attention to it. I think those are probably the most basic of things that I can tell you about that I think is important. So with that said, that's all I got for you today. It's a pretty quick hit. Hopefully this was beneficial to you. I think you should get some takeaways in here. And I'd be curious to hear what your conditioning looks like, and if you've put anything into play right about now, or maybe earlier, or you have a plan to it. I would just love to hear that. So please comment, or let me know, shoot me an email, whatever the case is. But I love hearing about these things. And again, feel free to copy or mimic something that I'm doing. And if you have questions, certainly reach out. Again, you could do this on Instagram at East to West Hunts. You could email me, info@easttowesthunts.com, or you could, comment on the YouTube or any other aspect where you're listening to this podcast. So greatly appreciate that. Last but not least, don't forget that tag applications are never too late. We got some good point-only opportunities coming up. So if you're interested in that, shoot me a note. And right now it is hunt planning time. So I'm getting a lot of requests for hunt plans for folks that drew tags on their own. And then obviously with folks that are doing the ultimate hunt package, they do have hunt plans included with their tag applications. So it is busy time right now. So get in sooner than later before I can't do any more of them. And let's talk about those things. Head over to the website, east2westhunts.com. Go ahead and hit that free consultation button and book a time so we could talk about things for this hunt plan that you're looking to get designed, and we can put that in play for you. So without further ado, thanks for joining. Appreciate you listening, and hopefully this was beneficial to you. Stick around for part 3 of this, which will be covering off on some gear prep. See you later. Remember to scout, hunt, repeat. Thanks.